Hi, Sheena here with another tutorial for you, and we are going to paint not exactly this, but an homage to a version of this gorgeous project by Pamela Stewart from my design team. It's absolutely beautiful. She's got it on a like kind of a book box here, which looks amazing. She's painted the box and used that beautiful book plate and the fairy to decorate it. So this is what we're going to be working through, and from start to finish, and I hope you're going to enjoy it. Okay, let's start with making the mould itself. So let's start with the fairy. So I'm bringing the fairy in here, and we are going to use a mix of clay colour, which is going to be made with the white clay and a little bit of the brown. You can see here, I always keep my little bits wrapped up in the foil because that's the best way to keep them fresh. Wrap them up as tight as you can, pop them in an airtight bag, and then I can put mine in another little like a food container to just keep air away from it. That's it. Keep air away. It's going to be great and good to go next time. So that's a colour I have mixed, and this is the resulting colour. Now I've got a lot of it and I don't need this much, but I did want to make a lot because we're going to use the same colour for the plate, the book plate front. So this has been, it just makes it just really pretty off-white colour. It's more like a porcelain colour, which is, I think, is just softer. It's nicer for colour. It just warms any skin tone up you're going to mix, and which we clearly will be because we'll be painting the fairy. Gives her more of a healthy glow. So that's ready to go there. And when it's fresh, when you've just mix the clay, leave it open for a little bit, for about 5-10 minutes. Just keep checking it because you'll feel it. You'll get to feel when the clay's a little bit too fresh, a little bit too wet, and it's a bit early to use at that stage. You want it so that it's not as damp and feels a little bit firmer when you're pressing it. I quite like doing it this way because I think it's just kind of nice little, it's like popping bubble wrap. It's just as satisfying, I find. So I'm happy to do this for a bit until it starts to lose some of the moisture. And then when it's at that stage, we're going to pop that to one side, but we're not ready to go yet. I just want to put my clay that I'm going to use shortly. Make sure that's sealed. We need to pop a little bit of something in this to help it release when we put the clay in. And what I've got here is just a little container that I keep, and this is Crisco, Trex, something like that. So just a vegetable cooking fat is fine, and that's all you need. This kind of amount. You don't want to have big lumps of gritty stuff in your mould. You just need a little bit over the surface, just so you can see it shiny on your hands, and it'll just help everything release, especially things that might be a little bit trickier, like the wings here. They might want to cling a little bit. And don't forget the little butterflies. Get them done. And then we will proceed with the mould. So let's do the big one first. So what I want this nice and smooth, because where I've got a face, I don't want to have any wrinkles and things. I wish. So that's pretty smooth there, and I'm going to pop that on there, and I'm going to squish down really quite forcefully because you don't want any air bubbles in there. If you miss something, she's not going to have, she might not have a nose. Yeah, she needs a nose. Yeah, so we're going to start like that, and then I'm going to just work around. There's no rush. It's nice and, quite relaxing. I find it quite therapeutic. And the thing is as well, you can turn the mould around. Don't feel you've got to do contortions. I always kind of start at the top. I've got my little method now. I start at the top bit like that, or it might be, even if it was more complicated at the bottom, I would turn it around. But I always do, for me, the top, whether it's a turned around mould or not, but it's always this bit here, and then I usually turn it around and work down like that. Now you can see I've clearly got way too much clay here. So I can remove a good chunk of this, but I always like to start with a lot more than I need. It's just, you know, even if you needed to add some, doesn't matter, you can just add that. You know, if you did run out halfway through, the clay doesn't mind, it'll squidge together and you won't know. I think it's best to not take that risk of a little join line, no. So I always start with a little bit, you know, I'm generous with it. Now, the other thing is, can you see how I'm looking at these in case there's any little bit there that might have been missed? In here, you look at your mould before you start. Whenever I'm stamping, I always say, read the stamp, read the mould before you start. Look at where there's little bits that cut into the design, because that's going to give you a hint later of where you might need to be really careful and push away so that these bits are revealed and you don't have any webbing or anything. So we're just going to continue pressing down, making sure that's really, really in there, and then work towards the bottom like that. And then we can just go around, tidy up, push back, see if there's any bits that you really want to just see a little outline around the outside. You want to see a little, as if you've taken a pencil and just drawn around the outside of the mould. You haven't, you don't, that's not what we're doing, but it looks like you've just taken a very sharp pencil and drawn around that, because that shows you that you won't have any little overhangs, any little frilly bits that need to be fettled later, and it should be nice and clean. And what you can do at that point, if you want to turn it over and just flatten it like this, it'll just make it easier to stick later. And then you can, again, I would like to have a double check in case it's pushed any bits over there like that. Now, the next thing is, Katie's are really clever. They have this border around the moulds like this. And this is so you can grab hold of them without grabbing hold of your moulded object and start getting some air into the design underneath there. So there's any air pockets. It's going to be like a vacuum, isn't it? So you want to release any air. Don't worry about having to do this super quickly or anything like that. And just take your time and just ease it out like this. It's not a race. It's okay. Can you see how now the head's popped out now? At first it was like, uh-oh, this don't look like it wants to part company, but it will. Just a little bit of encouragement, and that's what these little lips are for. So you can just manipulate them, start getting edges happy to work with you, and then you can get to the point where if you think you're ready, you can just encourage it to come out of this. And if you just need to just lift it a tiny little bit, that's okay, because this is quite a deep mould, this one. So it's quite varied in the depth of the structure. You've got really delicate, fine little bits. It's really, really super fine there. Can you see the little petals? To deep detail where our face is, and then it is just quite sculpted. There's a lot going on with that, but that's fabulous. That's lovely. So what I will then do is pop that on a piece of kitchen paper and pop it to one side and let it dry. Leave it to dry for 2, 3, 4 hours. And then after the 4 hours, I like to turn it over. But make sure that all of our faces, it's set. You don't want to turn it over and it kind of be a little bit Picasso-ish. You need to make sure that she's firm and she's drying. It feels dry to the touch, but it won't be, because inside that's really deep here. So I like to turn it over, and it helps it not bend as well. It's kind of like when you dry paper. If you're used to drying paper with a heat gun, you'll see, I always do. I dry it one side, then I dry it the other, and it tends to flatten it out that way. You haven't got an inconsistent surface drying on one side, not the other, which causes curling, because this is paper. Remember, it's paper clay. So we'll pop that to one side and we'll do some little butterflies now. So these little things, you obviously just need, I should mention as well, you always have a little glass ready somewhere. Silicone is brilliant to stand the glass on because it forms kind of like a seal, because I don't want to leave this clay just open like that because the air's getting to it and it's drying. So you need an upturned glass, which I'll get in a minute to show you, and then that will keep at least your clay a lot drier than just open to the air. So this one is I'm just squidging in like this. I'll try and get in fact, let me get closer camera here for you. Let me get in that bit closer for you. All right, we could get closer again. I see. There you go. And then I can press that just like this. Now these are, I've gone from one extreme to the other. These are really, really quite shallow. You're not going to need much clay at all for this. So it's important to just get rid of any excess. It's surprising how little you need. So I used a tiny little amount, and then it turns out I needed even less. But it is also still important to push back, get that little, as if you've got your fine pencil line around the outside, that you haven't used a pencil, remember? It's just there to let you know that it's ready to demold, release. And then you've got this gorgeous little butterfly. You see, if you have to just pick it up very carefully, you don't have to. It will, sometimes it'll drop out. Sorry, that's I'm just getting focused there for you. Pop it there. And you can see it better, hopefully. Yeah. And then we'll do the other ones. So I'll continue with these ones. Right, so there's our little butterflies. So we'll pop them to one side to dry. Okay, so on to the book plate. This is the next baby that we're going to mould. Now, I will say this straight away. This would not be one I would recommend as your first ever mould with paper clay. It's more of an advanced one because the size, for one, there's some little bits to be aware of. The flat area here can be a little bit challenging to get flat and even, but when you're used to it with practice, when you've got a little bit, like a few hours, under your belt with the paper clay, you will you'll be fine. And that's what I'm going to show you now. So what we've got, the first thing to do is we need to prepare it. So again, use your Trex or Crisco, anything like that. And now I've got a little bit more there because this in the centre, I'm just going to make sure there's enough on there because this, I really do want that to release nicely. So I've made sure there's enough on there. And also just be careful, especially if you've got pets in the house. Oh, we've got a ragdoll cat in the family, not at our house, but oh, good grief. Like the airborne hairs there. You just walk in the door and you're like literally are covered in hair. He's gorgeous. He's beautiful. But he tends to shed a little bit and those hairs are super fine. We've got little Willow Cockapoo who doesn't shed. Yay. So we haven't got that problem, but it's surprising how many little bits of, dust or anything, it likes to cling to silicone. So just be aware before you start. If there's any little bits like that, you don't want them ending up on your mould. Look, that was clean. And then where did that come from? Look, where it just keeps regenerating. What's that about then? So, but I'm really focusing on these little channels here. Yeah. And around here. Because this is where we want to make sure, and definitely in this writing, that we've got all of those bits with a little bit of this on there to help them release. Now, the next thing is to get your big chunk of clay like this. And in fact, you know what, I would rather have too much as not enough to start with. That's my mantra. And again, it's that off-white colour. And I'm just working it and getting it nice and smooth. When you're doing this, try not to get any air bubbles in if you can. Just don't want little pockets of air, because that can like kind of expand a little bit when it's drying sometimes, I've found. So just be aware of that. So not a big deal. It doesn't happen often. It happened to me once when I tried to force dry it, just saying. So that's there like this. That's about the right kind of size to start with. I'm just smoothing the surface, and then I'm going to take my little mini sugar paste rolling pin. You can get these really inexpensively now. I've got more than one as backup. Now I've got a lot of clay here. I can see I've got too much, but I'd rather have too much as not enough. Like I say, that's just going to be a lot that we're going to put back in the bag. So don't worry. It's kind of like, again, if you're a card maker, it's like embossing powder or glitter. You only use what you use, goes back. It's not wasted. So that'll do, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, and I'm going to put this over here, and I'm going to start squidging like this, and I'm going to anchor one corner. So what I'm going to do like this is I'm pressing into this mould really firmly again. Just the same technique, only we've rolled the clay out a little bit this time, just so that it helps us out when we're moving across. Now already I feel I want to turn this mould around, because I kind of feel it's easier to push away than pull towards me. So I'm just going to turn this around, and you can keep doing this. You don't have to just have it in one direction. I'm going to work from the sides with this one. Move across like this. So just press in, because we've got those channels around the sides, remember. We want those to come out nice and neatly. Right, so I've gotten rid of all of that excess now. Now what I want to do is I want to try and level out the back a little bit. Doesn't matter that there's fingerprints or it's not perfectly smooth. We can turn it upside down and try and sort that out a little bit. But I do know I've got a little bit in the centre here that needs to just move across. But just be careful if you're walking that across that you're pressing down again. You don't want to have introduced any little air pockets in there. So we'll tidy up in a second. We're still just making sure we've got all of that detail, which is a lot. These are amazing. I think they're absolutely exquisite. They're just so timeless. They look vintage in a great way, in a lovely way. I think they're the kind of book plates and fairies that I think are just appeal to so many people because of that vintage look, that timeless quality they've got. So I'm just working around now, and if it's a little bit thicker, I'm not going to worry about that. We can sort that out later. Rather that than too thin, and especially in the centre, I can level it out now with my palm. Right, so I think we're going to say that's almost ready to demould. And it's already, I can feel the clay getting drier as I'm working with it, because it's a large surface area. Okay, so now I'm going to go around and just make sure I can see that little line, like a fine liner line around the outside. And then we can work on demoulding it. So I'm just going to work like this and just start easing it out again, like we do, get that air away from it. And then turn it over, and hopefully it should release nicely like that. Now you see these little bits here, I've got a little fingerprint. That's really looking, have a little look around it, see if there's any bits. We've done really nicely with the border We haven't got any squished borders on there. We've done nicely with the flowers. Don't know what that little blue thing is there. No idea. Have you ever seen about where'd that come from? What's that tiny little blue thing? Doesn't matter, we're going to paint it anyway. I'm really happy with that. That's pretty much as good as it needs to be. This little dent here in the centre, what I would do is get a little bit of water, just a touch of water, and then just gently move over it like this, and you will be able to just smooth out that centre. Just barely damp. You can already see that's almost just disappearing. See, that one's virtually gone. That little fingerprint there, barely even noticeable. And when we paint it, you won't even know it's there. And actually, this bit here, the fairy's going to sit there. So this little lovely lady, you can see she's already started to dry. She's going to sit there, and she can have 1, 2, or 3 butterflies around her. Your choice. And how gorgeous is that? Come on. And then we're ready to get to the painting. I should mention this one needs to, again, this one definitely needs to dry on both sides, or it's more likely to curl. But let the surface dry this way up on some kitchen paper. 2 or 3 pieces of kitchen paper is even better, because that'll wick away any moisture in the paper clay. And then 2, 3, 4 hours later, turn it over, and just be aware in case it starts to bend or anything, but it shouldn't if you just turn it over like that. And then we've got a lovely book plate ready to colour. And then we're on the next bit. Okay, so we have our dried book plate, little fairy here, and butterflies. And you can see they're clearly different coloured clays. I've deliberately made this one darker. That you may think, oh, it's a bit too dark, but it's not. I'm going to show you how that's going to look, because a little bit darker is going to just make it a little bit more vintage looking. That's better than bright white for the look that we want. And then this one that is clearly paler for kind of like if you're going to aim for it, that's a good middle ground, that kind of colour. But you may get a little bit enthusiastic with the brown and end up with a colour like this. But I want to show you how that works too. So what we're going to use is we're going to use some of these fabulous water-based inks. We're going to create the background, this area around here, using golden green and olive green. So they're the 2 that we're going to start with. And I've put some in a little tray, little mixing tray. I've got these little inexpensive mixing trays here, which are really good because you may have a few colours that you want to mix up and try experiment with colour mixing, and you can just leave them there, and they're so inexpensive. You could maybe write your little formulas next to them on what you've mixed. But that's a whole other video that we've got to come. But for now, just know that we've got the 2 colours on here. So what I've got is a and actually I want a larger soft brush. You want as big a soft brush as you can manage and control. I'm not really worried if I get a little bit inside here. We're going to work all the way around the outside. So a nice soft round brush. I'm going to wet it and then dry it so that it's ready to take the colour. And I've also got some water wipes. I like to use water wipes rather than baby wipes, because water wipes they say that they're 99% pure water. So I'm believing them. And the reason I prefer them to baby wipes is baby wipes have sometimes got like emollients in and moisturisers. So if you use them, it can interfere a little bit with your painting later. It might make you kind of repel the paint a little bit. So yeah, I think these are a safer bet. So let's start painting these babies. Now I've started with the darker one here, so I'm going to go around in here. I'm going to try and avoid the flowers if I can, and I should be able to. It should be not too bad. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to wipe colour off as well. So I'm going with the darker colour, and I'm just going around kind of towards the center area. I've got some green on this flower, but I'm not worried about that because we do have the power of the white gesso. So now I want to go with the lighter green, which is, oh, was that one there? No, this one here. Yeah, that's it, the lighter green. Picked up the wrong one. When they're in the palette, it's hard to see which is the lighter one and which is the darker one. And as you can see, I'm pouncing this and letting it kind of puddle in the background, and that's going to give it kind of a regular kind of finish. I don't want it super smooth. I want it to look a little bit varied, and so that looks quite nice. I'm liking that. Colours are gorgeous, aren't they? So vibrant. To have that level of vibrancy on a dark background like this is pretty impressive, I have to say. Colour me impressed. So I'm going to work around here. Now what I want to do is not go too far forward before I take a baby wipe and then just wipe over these raised areas just a little bit, just to remove some of that colour. Now don't be too heavy-handed with this because it is paper clay, so you'd want to leave that lovely detail there. And look at how that looks like vintage porcelain. I love that. So you would think that brown colour, whoa, that's a little bit, you know, intense, but actually it's not. How gorgeous is that? Really pretty. And I really do like the water wipes for this. They're just the perfect kind of kitchen paper, kind of you know, disintegrates a bit, even if you get the, you know, the posh stuff. But these don't. They hold up a bit, and they're so affordable. It's just worth the investment, I think. A few pack of these little things, and that's looking fabulous. So I'm kind of going in with the darker, just around maybe the edges and around this oval, just to give it a little bit of variation in the greens. And I'm just pouncing just to make sure I get into all the little nooks and crannies. Right, I think I've got all the bits I need in there now, and I'm going to gently dry this with a heat gun now, and then we'll come back with the next stage. Right, so what I want to do is I want to tidy these flowers up so that when I paint them pink or red or whatever colour I want to do, they're going to look vibrant and not patchy, because the inks are you know, translucent, transparent, although the vibrancy of them, the intensity of the colour is fantastic to get that level of cover over a dark background. But these need to be nice and tidy, and the centre I want to have a little bit of a glow to it. So we're going to use some white gesso to prime the base so that it's a little bit lighter and it should accept their colour a little bit better. So I'm going to take just the neat gesso like this. In fact, you could probably just work from the lid for the amount that we're going to use, and then just carefully just paint over your flowers like this. Try and keep it nice and neat, because you don't want to get gesso onto the green, or then it becomes like Groundhog Day, where you start tidying that up, then you tidy the other up, and then you go, oh, I've got a bit on that again. Oh, no, I've got to do this bit again. So yeah, worth just taking your time and going over them. And it should dry really quite quickly, and then we can move on to the next bit. We'll do the centre. So now that I've gone over it once, I'm going to look and just see if there's any little bits of green still showing through. I don't want to put too thick a layer on because I don't want to lose any detail, because it's quite thick gesso, so it will fill in any fine detail if you're really heavy-handed with it. But I just want to just touch over the little bits where they've got the green ink is just mixed with the white a little bit. It's you know what, I'm just being really picky here, because when we put the other colour on, you won't even see that. Will be good, but just want to just make sure it's worth just looking over it. Now, so there the flowers done. So the next bit is I want this centre to glow. I want it lighter. I want her to kind of really pop out in the centre. So I'm going to take the gesso again, and I'm going to just put a thin coat all around this centre here. Use a biggish brush. You could have probably used a flat brush for this, but it just depends how good your brush control is. Try and get that nice and even up to that line. I've got a little bit caught there, but we can tidy it up later. It's such good gesso. A lot of gessos are quite wet. They have a lot of, they don't have as good a pigment content in it. The chalk, which is what gesso means, it's Italian for gypsum or chalk. So they tend to be too wet rather than you know, thick like this one, which means that it overwets your clay, which this one doesn't. And you don't want to overwet the clay, because then it's just going to have to dry again, because it being paper, it'll sink into the layers, and it just, you know, you could lose some of the detail if it's too wet and things like that. So we don't want that. But this one is fabulous. It's actually the best gesso I've used, this one, and that's a big you know, a big thing to say. I've used quite a few. Right, so that there is ready now. There's a couple of things you can do, and it's your call. We're going to colour these little bits here in gold later. Now, if you want the gold to really stand out, to really pop, the best way to do that is to use a flat brush and carefully just try and go over the top of this. Now, it depends how confident you feel, how lucky you feel. I can't believe I'm doing this when everything's going so well, but you know what? Let's go for it. If we put a little bit like this, it'll just make part of that gold pop a little bit more. So I'm taking most of the paint off the brush. You can see I'm putting some of the gesso on there and then removing it. Now you might want to go down a size of brush. Yeah, I've caught a little bit in the background. That means we'll have to tidy it up a little bit later. So I'm going to go a small brush here and try and do it that way. It'll take a little bit longer, but it means that you don't have to go back and keep tidying bits up if you've caught them. Larger areas, you can catch them with the flat brush, which is a big time saver. But for very fine little bits like this, it's worth just getting your fine brush out and doing it like that. Now this is, I'm just dry brushing over this because that's what we're going to do with the gold. I don't want to paint it perfectly flat like the flower was. I just want to put a little bit of a base on there to make the gold pop a little bit more when we come to do that bit. Because we're going to use gold mica powder over these little filigree bits. and it should make it shine a little bit more in areas. Right, that should do as a base for the gold. And what we need to do is paint this center area now. So we want it to look a bit vintage, but a bit of a glow in the middle. So we need to go back in with some inks. So let me pick out some inks here. Let's get a new palette. And that feels quite dry now. Right, so colours for the centre. I want it to look really quite vintage and a bit, but then with a centre glow, which is why we based it with that little bit of white. If your clay was more this colour, yeah, if you'd made it this colour, I wouldn't even say you need to go over with the gesso over these little filigree bits, and you probably wouldn't need that centre painted either, but it was just because it was quite dark, I wanted that contrast. So we're going to choose maybe some French mustard, give it a little bit of a glow in the centre. So French mustard, and we're going to use a little bit of a dark walnut for sure. So it's hard to see sometimes, but if you've got these little inexpensive palettes, you can maybe write with a Sharpie or something where your colours are, and then just keep coming back to them. I mean, they were like 25 pence or something silly like that each, and they do the job. And if you can write on them, it doesn't matter for 25p, does it? So we've got that and that. Let's put a little bit more of that golden green on there as well. And let's have a nice little sunny glow in the middle, which actually we've got that, didn't I? Put the French mustard there. If you can't remember where things are, stand your inks like where they are in the palette. So that's golden green. No, that was golden green. That was French mustard. That was it. So we've got dark walnut there. We've got French mustard here, and I've got golden green there. So hopefully, you never know, I might be right. So 2 things I want. I want a brush again, a clean brush. And I want a sponge. Now I'm looking for my sponge because without the sponge, I am absolutely lost. Okay, got my sponge. Right, look at the state of this. Just a kitchen sponge with bits pulled out of it, right? So this is important, though. This is what we need. So I'm going to pop these here just for my reference. Got my water here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a little bit of the lighter colour in the centre like this. Now you can see the gesso there is kind of like repelled the ink a little bit, but with a little bit of encouragement, we'll get it to mix. And then a little bit of the brown around the outside, just to give it a nice vintage feel. So glow in the centre, dark around the outside, and I'm not worried about this here because I'm actually going to be painting that later, dark brown, so that's okay. And then that's looking pretty good. I think I'm quite happy with that. Clean that. I want a little bit more of that yellow in the centre, which is that one there. So more of that one on there. And I could even go a little bit darker. I could put a little touch of, so it sounds a bit dramatic, but a little bit of black. Let's go for a touch of black. Not much, just around the very outside, just to give it even more of a vignette kind of look. That's what I'm going for. Right, now to get that all blended in there, I've got my sponge. I'm going to wet it, but then it's virtually dry, and then I'm going to just pounce to get some texture going on in there. I've got a little bit of a brush mark there from the gesso, but again, I'm not really worried about that. It just gives it that more vintage kind of look. And we can dry that, and then we can pop another little layer on there. Let me just... And in fact, another little trick is if you want even more of an opaque cover, you can mix a little bit of gesso with your ink, which I might do for the centre to get a little bit more glowy in the centre where this is just broken up a little bit. So if I want that middle bit a little bit more vibrant, if I take some gesso and take some, and I'm just going to mix it on my mat here, and then take some of the mustard, pop it in there, and mix it up. Now when I use the sponge, I'll get a much better cover in the centre. And I'm just losing those little line marks in there, see? Just light pouncing. If you find a sponge is a little bit too large, just cut it down a little bit and then you'll be fine. But that I'm quite liking, and if I pop a little bit more of the yellow in there, it should have even more of a glow, and there'll be enough of that gesso to make it cling, just a little bit like that. Just you want it really random. See the way I'm moving the sponge around and just tapping really lightly. Right, that's really nice. I'm happy with that. Looking good. Okay, now we need to get that dry, and then we're going to give her a nice little base to sit onto. Yeah, need that. These little water wipes are very handy. Quick clean up. Thank you very much. Right, I'm going to gently dry that with a heat gun, gently. Right, that looks pretty good. So now what I want is I need a rigger brush, which is the brush that looks like this. It's the one that looks like it needs a haircut. And they're called liner brushes or rigger brushes because back in the day they would use them for nautical illustrations to paint rigging and long lines. And sign writers use them because of the longer bristles, they hold a lot of paint. So if you want to paint a long straight line, you can usually see if you stop halfway and then join it up again, there's a little overlap where the paint kind of pools. But with a rigger brush, you can paint a really long line without having to reload. That's why it's called that. So what we're going to use is we're going to use some of the dark walnut again, believe it or not. Yeah, I think that was up there. That was there. So I'm just going to reload some of that. And I need some of the dark green, which is the olive green. And I'm going to pop that here. So I need to remember I'm using the top one, the bottom one. When they're in the little palette, it's really hard to see the colours. So, oh, and the other thing is if these dry, it doesn't matter. Leave them there. You don't have to worry about it. You can actually pipette them back up if you squeeze the pipette, and then you can suck them back up and put them back in the thing. But if there's any left, it doesn't matter because what you can do is just re-wet it and you'll be fine to use it again. So what I'm doing is I'm working right at the bottom and coming up with nice long sinuousy kind of grassy shapes. And you can see how with that brush you can really get those really pretty, because this is where we're going to sit the fairy. And she's going to be sitting amongst all this gorgeous foliage, but in a lovely vintage fashion. You see how it's drying much lighter. So it looks dark when it goes on, but don't worry about it because it will dry later. We might even get really dramatic and pop a little bit of black, make it darker brown again. It's just about different colours and different contrasts. We'll get some green there as well. We don't want it starting kind of mid frame. See, my little fronds are starting right at the bottom. That was quite a thick one there. If you use a light pressure, you'll get a much lighter, thinner grass, and it'll taper. If you lift up just as you get to the end of the brush stroke, it'll be nice and fine. And then we'll go in with some of the green now as well. I've got a little bit of the black in with the green, which is good because you really do need it to be seen against that background. Going really quite dramatic up there. A lot of grass. And that looks pretty good. I think we're good for that. Yep, that's all right. So next thing is to paint the flowers. We need to paint them and decide what colour. Right, so we've got, let me get another, have I got another palette? No, I need to clean the palette. Hang on, we're good. Got that one then. So what I've got is hot magenta. So this is from my basic mixing palette of suggestions. So hot magenta, and I have marigold. Now, hot magenta is pink. Marigold is clearly yellow. But if you mix, I'm just going to put one little drop of marigold in there, just a small bit. And where'd I put the hot magenta? Just had it. Seriously? There it is. And then I put, say, 2 drops of the magenta. Let me show you on a piece of card. Hopefully it should look different. So this is just the magenta, like this. Gorgeous, vibrant pink. Certainly is hot. And that's the marigold. Yeah, clearly yellow. But if you mix a touch of marigold in with your hot magenta, whoa, look at that. You get a vibrant red. Who knew? That's why printers use those particular colours. So we can start off with a bright, vibrant colour on these. And then we can go and darken them a little bit. So let's start off with the in your face colour we just mixed on those flowers. Pretty. Now we would not have had them as vibrant as that if we hadn't based it with white gesso, because red and green make brown, and because these are water-based inks, they're translucent. So you would see the underneath layer showing through, and so they would look brown. So that's why I took the time to coat them with some gesso. Now gesso is like a base for acrylic paint and things, so it doesn't absorb watercolour, grab hold of it like paper does, like the paper clay would have done had I not painted it with the gesso first, if we'd used that lighter colour. And so you wouldn't need as much on this, and it would really be in your face bright. But because this has got the gesso one there, it's looking a lot paler because it's not absorbing into fibres. It's sitting on the top of a more shiny surface. I've just gone over onto that background a little bit. might be too quick, but again, I'll just try and tidy that up if I'm really quick with a almost dry brush, and I just pick that up there. Might be able to fix it quickly. So we've got really pretty pink flowers there. If you want to go darker, I'll let that dry a little bit, and then we can put another little layer on there, and maybe with a touch of brown to just take them down slightly. I did have brown in the other one, didn't I? The other palette. Oh, here we go. Guess the colour. I think it's that one there. This one here. That very one. So let me just pop a little bit more on there, for the second coat might be a little bit stronger, and it doesn't use as much. Can you see? We're just not having to put as much on this time. But then we want to take it down to a bit more of a vintage look. That looks very clean and vibrant. So I'm going to use a little bit of this brown and just pop a little bit like that. Take some excess off. Just kind of like a glaze on there is what I want. Don't want it to look, still want it to look pinky, but I don't want it to look as bright and clean. Just caught a little bit in the background there again. I just want to pick up. You could even pop a little bit of a colour in the centre. Oh, that looks quite nice. I'm happy with that. Again, I'll just pop a little bit just to dirty these up a little bit. Just as if they've got a little bit of wear and age on them and they're not brand spanking new. You'll probably have a little bit wear and age on you by the time you finish watching a few of my tutorials. Just saying. Sometimes not as quick as the quickest things, but I'll try to give you all the info you need. So, filter, that's all I would say. You'll get good at that. Right, just pop a little hint of yellow. Yeah, I'm not going for perfection here, I'm going for vintage look on them. Right, that's not looking bad at all. We're getting there. So what I need to do is I need to paint the edges, maybe a dark brown, and the around this side here, dark brown. Now, I'm not sure how the dark brown's going to sit on there, but we can try it. Let's just go for dark walnut now. I know that there is dark walnut, so I'm just going to reload that, and I may need a touch of black in that just to make it a little bit more. The black is really, really strong, so when I say touch, I mean like that mini touch. And then what you can do is on the back of your project, you can try the colours out, because you're going to stick that flat. So you can see I tried the greens out earlier, and that's more of the dark kind of brown I want to use. Whoops. So we're going to go around the outside and the inside here. So I'm using a largish round brush, and I am carefully just dragging around the oval and trying to make it as even as possible. So this is where that darker clay helps, because you haven't got stark white showing through. if you didn't have paint, if you haven't got some paint up to the oval, like green or the brown on the inside, you'll see it'll just jump out and hit you in the eye, like that unpainted area. So don't be afraid when you paint the middle or you paint the outside that you get a little bit up to that with the either the green or the vintage browny colours in the centre. And you'll see that's darkening already. Now, have a look around the outside and see. Clearly, we need to paint some of that because we have got bits missing. So if you'd gone right up to that, you might get away with just a fine kind of edge to that, but we're not. So we're going to have to go around and carefully now try and, again, just tidy up around the outside. Yeah, I think that looks okay. Happy with that. So we need to do the same around the outside now. Okay. Right, so then the last thing to do on here is going to be to paint the gold on there around the outs there, all of the filigree bits. I'm just thinking, I'm wondering if we should put a little bit of more yellow in the centre of these. If I can, just a touch. When it's dry now. Okay. Right, okay, so now I'm going to clear up all this paint and then we're going to go in with the mica paint. Let's start painting this, all these little filigree things. In fact, let's come in a little bit closer so that you can see a little bit better how I'm doing. Not sure if I should have done that. Okay, so I've got some of the fabulous Cosmic Shimmer Iridescent Mica pigment in the gold there. And it's in the one of these little palettes. And now I'm going to add water because this is not just powder. This is a paint. It has a powdered binder. You know, paint is like your pigment. And binder, that's it. So the pigment in this case is the gold, gorgeous iridescent mica, which is a dry substance, but it needs something to stick it onto what you're painting. And that's what is also in here, but it's in a ground powder form. And when you add water, becomes the most gorgeous, luscious paint. And you can make it as thick or as thin as you want, so you can sponge it on backgrounds, make it like a very pale glaze, or you can do what we're doing now and mix it to a quite a good consistency paint. So I think I'm going to just start, maybe I'll start here, start as well as anywhere, and I'm just going to take my brush. Now this is not easy on camera because it's much easier to look straight over the top of what you're doing. But if I do that, you just get my head in it. So you seriously, I'm not making excuses up, but this is something that you want to take your time with. Get some really good light and get it where you can see it. I'm trying to get it where you can see it, not me. And I'm kind of not. I'm having to use it at a further distance than I would if I wanted to make a really good job of it, just saying. Let me see if we can get both be happy here if I turn that around and do it like that. You see the way that gesso hasn't gone stark white like it looked at the beginning, it's just made it lighter, which is good because it just helps that gold pop a little bit more than it would if it was just on that green. Not looking too bad. Okay. And again, what we'll do is when we're finished is you go over it and just carefully look and see if there's any bits that just need a little, a little touch. If you've caught a bit of gesso somewhere you didn't want it to be, or a little bit of the flower colour's gone somewhere you didn't want it to go. Kind of tempted to do the centre of the flowers gold. So that yellow didn't show up too well. What you can do, when we coated the flowers with gesso, and gesso isn't really a base for watercolours, it's a base for acrylic and oils and things like that. So it doesn't really take watercolour that brilliantly. But so what you can do is, if you want your flowers to really pop and look less vintage and more perfectly evenly painted, you could paint them with acrylic paints. That would be the way to go. And I don't mind them looking a little bit like aged. That's the kind of look I'm going for. Anyway, so it works out well. You really do want to take your time when you're doing this gold, because if you get this where you don't want it to be, it's much more troublesome to cover, because it's like when you get glitter where you don't want it to go. We don't want to go there. Especially this writing bit. This is the bit where you want to, slow down. I'm not even going to talk for this bit. I'm just going to do it. Right, so what I need to do is I need to get this in the best light I can and look really closely and see if there's any little bits that need just tightening up, where I've caught something I didn't want to catch, and then get that all finished. But that's pretty much it done. That's the background ready to go. If I take this away, and then you can see that that's not looking bad at all. But I do want to go even closer and just go around and just check, especially with the gold, and see if there's any little bits I've missed. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to paint this gorgeous fairy, and I'm going to have her coordinate with the colours that we created in the background piece. So the first thing I like to do is to start with a skin tone. And what you definitely need is you definitely want a piece of scrap paper to keep trying out little colour swatches and things as they're mixing. So in my palette here, I've got it really close in here so you can see, I have I've got Buff, which is going to be the base of her skin tone that I'm going to mix. I've got Hot Magenta, Marigold, the green, which is the golden green. I've got dark walnut, and I've got Tuscan teal back there. So the first thing is to mix a nice colour for her skin tone. So let me get a brush here, that would be a good size. And so the base is going to be Buff, but you'll see it's a little bit yellowy. She needs to be a little bit warmer than that. If I bring that in there, that's a little bit kind of not pinky enough, but we don't want it super pinky. So I'm going to take a touch of magenta and just pop that in there. So you're working with the smallest amount at a time. There's a lot of magenta on that brush. That wasn't the true representation. Can you see how much pinkier that one is? And I barely touched the magenta with the brush. That there is getting closer. There's still a little bit of pink on that brush, so I'm going to pop a little bit more in there. We don't want it to look like she's got a horrible sunburn either. You know what? It's just a lot of pink in this brush. Let me get that out of the brush and then we'll see what we've got. Right, still too pink. Now the thing is if you, let me clean the brush and see what we've got. If you end up where you are clearly too pink, then you got to be careful because you're going to end up with a lot. That's really strong, that magenta. You're going to end up with a lot of skin tone. So it's best getting another palette and taking, if that happens, taking some more buff and popping a little bit in there like that. And then take a bit of the mix that you've just mixed and pop it into that one, because if you don't, you'll end up with a gallon of it by trying to make it less pink again. So that is better. That's more what we want, especially on this more kind of sallow, kind of cooler tone here. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to just paint over the skin areas with this colour here. Now, we can always adapt it. If it's looking a little bit too pink, we can change that later. I'm not worried about getting it on the band or on her, on the dress or anything, because we're going to be painting those colours darker, so it won't matter. It's still quite pink, but that's okay. It'll look more stark until you get the other colours on. So it's just going to look really quite vibrant skin wise because nothing else has been coloured yet, so don't worry about it too much. We can always adapt it later if we need to. So I'm not going to try giving us sculpted cheekbones and anything like that. I'm just simply going to paint her face just like that, and her hands. Look around the sides, make sure you've got everything covered. And then later we can adapt it if we need to. All right, I think we can probably work with that. So she is looking rather pink, but that's okay. We can tone that down, and we can tone it down really easy with this clay colour, because all you need to do is just add a little bit of water. And can you see how that's lifting a little bit? And it's leaving it a little bit more of that cooler tone underneath. So when you've mixed your clay colour, just water it down even more. Barely a glaze, and then build it up for the skin tone. Now, I know I said we're not going to sculpt everything and things like that, but you will find that like around the hairline and you know, in the recesses, it's going to be a little bit darker. So, oh, I picked up blue. We do not want blue. Blue does not feature anywhere in the skin tone. I'm picking up a micro dot of the walnut colour, the brown, and I'm going to pop a little bit of the buff into that, pick up a little bit more, and a touch more of the buff. So I'm just mixing a dark kind of shadowy colour to go around the outside here. And again, I want this really quite dilute, and all it's going to do is just make it look like it's a little bit more, you emphasize the shadows, like under her neck and around here where there's not going to be any light. Don't, you know, overwork it, because it is paper at the end of the day, and you'll start to lose detail if you do that. Brush over and brush over and brush over. So we'll leave that there for now. We can always play with it a little bit more later. All right, next let's focus on the hair. Let's get the hair sorted as well. And I'm just going to go straight forward and going to go brown here just to keep it simple. So I'm going to just paint this on and try to avoid the flowery bits. And there's hair just hanging down there. Probably need a smaller brush at this point. Would be the wise thing to do. If you've got good brushes though, this should form a really nice point where you don't have to keep swapping down to really, you know, tiny sizes. You should be okay. Right, okay, so the hair's done. We'll get her yeah, let's get the wings and everything painted before I do anything else to the face, because then that will dictate how much colour we need elsewhere. So I want to do predominantly a pale green, that lovely pale green, but I'm gonna water it down a bit so it's less of a, oh wow, that's still gorgeous and juicy, isn't it? It's so vibrant. So we'll pop that there, pop some down here, and then I might mix a little purpley colour with magenta, and then a touch of this blue, and see what we get if we put a mauvey purple in there. Maybe a bit more bluey purple. Yeah, that's better. I like that better. Into the wing area. And then just add water, and we should get a nice ombre effect. Best thing to work with these inks is just use less and add more if you think you need it, because they are super pigmented. They're really a lot of colour in them. I like that. I do like that. That's pretty. Okay, so we'll do the bottom wing the same. So we popped a little bit of that on, and then we added a touch more of the blue, and then water just to bring the two together. That's an unusual mix, isn't it? I like that. Okay, do the other wings to match. I may put a little touch of a maybe a tiny touch of a darker blue just on the end, just to take down a little bit of that vibrancy. But this is the fun of it. This is what you're going to enjoy doing, is just having a little experiment and a play with it. We're going to wipe those wings back as well. We're going to take the baby wipe, and we're going to just wipe back some of that so we can see some of that veining on our wings as well. So by just wiping that off, they're either going to look not as bright and in your face, and you're going to get some of this other little veining showing through as well. And that was the bee that you're going to see the other veining on there that you may have missed. It's incredible, the detail in here. So we'll do the other one. I would say work one at a time, because then you can see how you like it, and then have the colours blend into each other nicely before they start to fix, before you move on to the next one. I am going to just wipe back a little bit of this skin tone, just to give our arms a little highlight there, and that looks better. Actually, you can do that with our cheeks as well. And our hands. Okay, that looks better. And then we can get to decorating her headdress. So we've got the green, this light green here, but we can make it a little bit darker. Just add a touch of that blue colour there, and paint around. Let me see, where have we got leaves here? Let me make that a leaf. It's up to you. If it's not quite clear if it's a flower or a leaf, it's your composition, so just paint it the way you want to paint it. What I would say. Again, if you keep it light and then darken it, keep that kind of the same principle as if you're using watercolours. It's easier that way. You can always darken a colour, but lightening it again is a challenge. And again, what we'll do is we'll look over this because I've taken a little bit of hair colour off there, which is actually what I want to do with that wipe as well, because it'll give a natural kind of texture and highlight in our hair if I go over with the wipe as well. Right then, so that's, oh, we've got green on our little armbands and bodice on our dress. In fact, I'm going to colour them all so that they're just leaves. It's simpler. Okay. So I'm going to let's paint the dress that pretty blue. I might make it just a slightly purpley. Let's go slightly purpley. This is, I've got to say it again, I'm not making excuses, but this is a little bit trickier painting it so you can see it. When you're painting it yourself, pick it up, get it close to where you can see it well. It's going to make it so much easier. I'm trying to get it so that you can see it, so the camera can see it, which is not necessarily where I can see it best. So who knows what it's going to look like when we're done. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. But it should be a lot easier when you're taking your time and doing it yourself. Okay. So this hot magenta, I'm going to mix a little bit of that. And we mixed a little bit of, and we made it a little bit more of an orangey, pinky pink, didn't we? Bit more of a coral pink. So let's paint some of these. Whoa, that's a bright colour. Woohoo, you're not going to miss that one. Okay, I want it a little bit more, I think a little bit more magenta. Less yellow in the next one. But the thing is, if you stick to the same palette, if you hear artists say it's a nice and attractive palette, basically means that you're just sticking to the same colours consistently in your composition and mixing those colours together to get other colours. So if you do that, chances are they're all going to work together because they are from the same palette. So you're not going to have them clashing and things. So I've got some brighter ones and darker ones and all different little ones in here. Right, I just want to go over and just wipe back a little bit of this colour just to make it look a little bit more sculpted and a little bit aged. Looking a little bit too clean right now. Even the hair will look a little bit more natural if I wipe it back. Looks a lot softer. Okay, she's looking pretty. I do want to put a little bit more buff because I think we've taken a little bit too much colour off our nose. So I'm not going to get too fancy here. I just want to, oh, that's that pink colour I think I mixed. Oh, no, it's not buff. She's got a red nose now. She's like Rudolph, saying nothing. Oh, okay. Can we fix it? I hope we can. You know what? That's all the fun of it, isn't it? And right, we want to give her just a little glow on her cheeks, but not so that she looks like she's Aunt Sally. Maybe just a little pink tint on her lips. And then we will give her, depends how steady your hand is, we're going to do a tiny, fine line to suggest some eyelashes. But that, it's not essential. But if you're feeling that you can do that, and confident to do it, then why not? I'm just looking for a really super fine brush here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take some of the brown here, and I'm going to just, you know what, I'm going to try and get this so I can see it and you can. Just a super fine line like this, like ridiculously fine line just along the eye, bottom of the eye socket, just to suggest some eyelashes. You don't need to paint full on eyelashes and things like that. That'll be fine. And then we'll paint these little guys here. So it's up to you what colour you want to paint them. Because we've gone quite green, we can stick with a little bit of that. You keep it like that. Now, on the Pamela's Gorgeous Inspiration project that we've been using, she's glazed her fairy and it looks gorgeous. She's used well, there's two ways you can do this. In fact, let's show you this way, because I know this way is, a lot of you may already have these and it works a treat. So what we'll use is the iridescent, the pearlescent Cosmic Shimmer mica powder. So I'm not even gonna put it in a little tray. I'm just going to take some out here like this, and I'm going to pop it on there with some clean water. Now I don't want this really thick. I want it really quite watery. When we mentioned the gold, I said you could use it like just a really light kind of glaze rather than a full-on paint. So if you're not sure, try one of your butterflies or a few of your butterflies first and give them a little wash over with this, and you'll see it looks like a luster finish. Looks really pretty. And then if you want to maybe put a finishing protective coat over them, a spray polyurethane or something like that, which I would do if it was going to go on a book for sure, then that will protect it even further and seal it and make it water resistant. So those little guys are done. Now this is where you've got to be brave, because we're gonna paint her. So I'm going for it, going straight on the face here, and we're just going to go over. Don't go over and over with this, just put it on and let it be, because these are water-based paints, and if you keep brushing and brushing, you might lift some of the colour. So just put it on, leave it, move on. So I need a little bit more, so I'm going to mix a little bit more for her hair. So you don't want it so it looks white, so be careful if it's starting to look white, you need to dilute it a little bit. But it looks so pretty on the wings. You could go a little bit heavier on the wings if you want, because you know, they could be, it'll make them paler, and that's okay, because you know, they look a bit more iridescent and otherworldly, and just rather pretty, I think. I'm going to do the dress now, and then we'll do the other wing. See how the colours become much softer? Everything's softened now. But you definitely would want to put just a little layer of a spray, a polyurethane, to seal it. If you're going to brush a finish on it, you do want a sealer first though. So to seal it, if you brush anything on, you could lift colour. So just be aware of that. Okay, so, and if you want, if it's a little bit thick somewhere, just use a little bit of water and just lift a little bit off if you think it's a little bit too, if it's looking a bit white in places and you don't want it to look white, you just want it to look pearlized. Yeah. And then I'm going to clear this up, and then we're going to see how that looks as a little composition that we've painted. Okay, so this is the frame that we coloured earlier, and we've got the background all ready for the star of the show here. And this is this gorgeous fairy queen. She's going to sit there like this. Now it's up to you where you want to place her. You can place her lower down if you want, further up. It's up to you. I think I like it about there. I think that looks rather nice. And then we've got little butterflies. Now you can place a little one, maybe just pop one on a flower, or you can pop all three flying around her. Just to fill that space up there if you want. Entirely your call, wherever you'd like them. Maybe just have the two smaller ones there. And then a larger one like this. So if you see the gorgeous, we'll show you the box that Pamela created, and then you'll see that I've changed the colours a little bit so that they're more of a pinky tone rather than the reddy tone, but that's so you can see a choice. So if you see, if I fold, no, if I do this here, you'll be able to see how this is more of a red tone, and then but this one is a cooler, pinkier tone, and entirely your call, but it's the same process. And then you would stick that on one of your journals, use the Cosmic Shimmer glue, which is, I think, one of the best, well, I think it's the best glue ever. So use your good strong Cosmic Shimmer glue to stick all the elements together, and stick this flat and just hold it flat while it's setting onto whatever base you're going to stick it onto, whether it's going to be a journal cover, it's going to go in a frame, it's going to be on a box, whatever you're going to do, but make it an amazing keepsake, and definitely protect it. Get I would suggest a spray polyurethane varnish would be a good thing, or a spray sealer and then a polyurethane water-based non-yellowing varnish. And you can get, if you want it to look matte and still got that natural finish, you can get the matte varnish, or use satin or a gloss, your call again. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I certainly did. And we'll see you on the next one. Take care.